And welcome now, it's Flightdeck, podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I am Tim Capper. You can reach me on X at Repact. It's REPPACT. And my co-host Cliffy D. How are you, buddy? And you can find him, by the way, on X at Cliffy D. How you doing, bud?
Hey. Oh man. Well, we're back into it, man. The camp life is thriving, and man, we got so much to talk about. Man, let's not waste any time. Let's just dive right into it, man.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
of course, we do have to acknowledge and thank our presenting sponsor, of course.
Yes, we do. The guys over at SportBuff, we really appreciate them. If you use the promo code ALSFlightDeck10 at checkout and use it at the end of your order, you will save 10% off on that said order. Head over to sportbuffshop.com. Use the promo code, save 10%. And don't forget to support local. They will be having some new stuff up. The 2024 merch should be available very shortly. But I've seen a sneak peek of some of the stuff, and it looks really, really nice. So but again, you can use it on CFL stuff, NBA stuff, Major League Baseball. They have a whole slew of stuff over there on their newly done website, by the way, which really looks nice. Yeah, I say camp. I'm glad camp is back. I just need to remember again that even though that it is overcast, that yes, you can still get sunburned.
Or windburn or anything like that.
Yeah, man, I come home and my wife goes, "Look, Tim, look at your face." I go, going to the bathroom. Yeah, I was just a touch red.
Although nothing will top 2018, the burn that you and I got from. You remember those benches, the benches at the in between Olympic Stadium and Stade Saputo, where they had practice.
Yeah.
Oh, that was brutal.
Yeah. We never learn. We never learn. No matter how old we are, we never learn. So obviously, our next day at camp coming up very soon. By the way, we will be at camp. At least, obviously, we'll be at the scrimmage on Saturday. If the weather's nice, Tim will be bringing his safari cap. At least that. So, or at least wear some SPF 100. So, let's talk about it, dude. I mean, obviously, we were, it was a fun getting up to camp, seeing how they have it set up in Saint-Jérôme. First off the hop, what were your thoughts? Because I will admit, I don't remember seeing it as much as I did in Trois-Rivières, but man, dude, and as I showed in social, they basically have banners all the way up that main street heading to the sports complex, didn't they?
Pretty much as soon as you got into the city of Saint-Jérôme itself, I mean, it was just right away. You said like banners on. It felt like every pole had some sort of Alouette banner on it. A couple other big signs were showing, just talking about "Welcome to Saint-Jérôme," "Welcome to Alouettes Training Camp." Like, wow!
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I have never seen anything like that for any of the Alouettes camps. I mean, when I think back to when the camp was at in Lennoxville at Bishop's University, past 2 years at Trois-Rivières, if you just go strictly based on the town where the camp was being held, you'd have no idea anything was going on, let alone Alouettes Training Camp. But when it comes to Saint-Jérôme, they want you to know the minute you walk, cross into the city limits. By the way, Alouettes Training Camp is here, and you better be checking it out. And I gotta say, I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see that.
Yeah, it wasn't only on the streets itself, but it was also in the parking areas from where the at the sports complex itself. It was there also. It was a very unique setup, totally different than it was to Trois-Rivières, obviously. But there were a lot of, for day one, there were a lot of people there looking to experience day one of, I guess we could say, of year two. I mean, it's the next chapter. So it's, I was pleasantly surprised to see how many people showed up for training camp.
Yeah, it's easy to say that people were probably going to show up just simply because of the fact that the Alouettes are the reigning, defending, undisputed Grey Cup champions. Of course, that's going to draw interest. Of course, people are going to be fascinated and want to see what's doing with that. I mean, and if that's the reason, then so be it. But I came away very impressed with the turnout, all things considered. I mean, it wasn't in the thousands like you see in NFL training camps, but there was a really, really good turnout. We even had trouble parking the car, if you can, if you can believe that. Like trying to find parking, which is something that I've never. I don't think I've ever encountered that where it's like, oh my gosh, where I have to park, we have to park far away and actually have to walk to get to the training facility. Like this is the first time we've seen anything even remotely close to that. So it speaks well. It speaks well to. I don't know if it's all of Saint-Jérôme or if it's people coming up from Montreal or whatever the combination of fans and participants alike. I don't know what the exact combination was, but the fact that the parking lot was jammed up right away. I mean, that's a good problem for the Alouettes to have. That means people are interested. That means people care, and people want to see what's going on at training camp this year.
Yeah, exactly. The only time I remember that occurring for Trois-Rivières was where they had the scrimmage game. Other than that, I completely agree with you. I don't remember ever seeing it like that for just a camp day at all. For at least for the last 3 years, I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, it's give me your thoughts on the locale and the setup that they have there, because I mean, it's not the best thing in the world. Yes, I understand it is just training camp. You're basically going from a 2,000 seat stadium in one central location with all the seats to what was put out today, I think, with the Alouettes promoting the scrimmage game that's coming up this weekend, to just 1,500 seats. But totally different configuration. But what were your thoughts on how camp was done on day one?
I think even the Alouettes had to be a little surprised by themselves by the turnout, just simply in the fact that where are we going to put all these people? Because I think they were expecting a good turnout, but I don't know if they were expecting quite as good as what they got. And once again, that's a good problem to have. That's a good problem for the organization to have to try and figure out, especially when it comes to the scrimmage game, because the way this field is set up, you got two fields in use, which is pretty good in the sense that you can go from one field to the other. But at the same time, I get why they had to set up the way they did, having the team go back and forth between two full football fields, but the stands are in one location presently. And that makes it a little bit difficult, because if you go inside the stands, you sit down and you start watching, then all of a sudden everybody just kind of scoots over to the other field, and you're kind of stuck. Unless you turn around in the stands, which again, if you're at the top of the stands, that's not so bad. You can still sort of pivot around and see what's happening on the other field. But if you're in the front row, you can't do that so easily. And that's basically what the first day was. It felt like, okay, whole bunch of drills on field one. Then you go to field two for a whole bunch of other drills. Then back and forth. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, we were standing up, you and I, and just leaning against the fence to be able to watch the thing. So it wasn't so bad for us.
No,
but I mean,
no.
The idea, if you're going to put out stands, like maybe kind of have everything right there and then. Well, we asked about that. We asked about why they would run things that way, and they said this was the best way they found they could maximize the space that was available to them. You don't have to wait for drills to get set up and things like that, which I get it to that degree, but nevertheless, it still makes it a little bit difficult. As I said, like if you're in the front row of those temporary stands, you're kind of out of luck if you want to turn around and see what's doing on the other field. When they get back to the first field, that's fine. But if you want to see the whole thing, it presents a bit of a challenge. So I kind of get why they did what they did, and maybe it won't be like that entirely, but it was a different way of looking at things, I guess. That would be one way to put it.
I agree. I actually did miss having the opportunity to go up like we did in Trois-Rivières at Stade Diablo, going up to the second deck and watching that one day that we went up there and watched camp. It's a different experience being up there. So now it is basically first come, first serve if you want to get into those stands, for at least I guess for any camp, any training camp day, or for the upcoming scrimmage. So, but you know what? Again, it's next year. It's next year. So that's the thing. So it is what it is. I was happy with how they. I mean, I don't think we're talking about how much of a surprise it was too. Did you honestly expect to see Saint-Jérôme police there? I mean, they expected I guess enough people to come that they asked the police to be there at least to make sure everything was on the up and up with everybody that was going to be there.
Yeah, I guess because it's a public facility, like they don't have. Well, I mean, it looked like they had some private security,
Mhm.
but I guess they're just erring on the side of caution, which you can't blame them for. But I mean, not that people are going to get rowdy at a training camp, session, but you just never know, right? I guess people are so excited to see the players and coaches and all that. Hey, you never know, right? But
Yeah,
yeah, it was a little different to see that, but it's put it this way: it's training camp for everybody, right? Not just for the
exactly.
players and the coaches, even the participants. It's training camp for them, and it's the very first time they're doing this in Saint Jerome. They're going to be back there for the next 2 years, so maybe it's all part of the feeling out process, trying to figure out how to make this work, how to maximize the time and space that you have available for this event, and just trying to do things the right way. So I'll give them a pass for that, or kind of give them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And just the unifile in me itself. It's funny. I don't know if you did an eye roll or an internal eye roll when once I mentioned this, but for me to bring this up, but it was I noticed the new jerseys the practice jerseys that they were wearing. They look very sharp.
Mhm.
If anybody remembers the orange jerseys that they wore last year in Ottawa, and if you happen to get a hold of one or see one, especially for the Alouettes, they're very similar. Very similar. They're made by New Era, same thing. They have the Owls logo on the shoulders themselves, and they obviously in the three different colors for, offense, defense, and I guess we could say,
Special,
well, everybody else. I mean, it's
yeah,
quarterbacks, kickers, and long snappers, et cetera, et cetera. So,
right.
but it looked really, they look sharp, man. It looked
Mhm.
really, really nice. I mean, it's um, more PKP's money. Yeah.
Well, and also the fact that this. I don't know if it's league mandated or not. They had to make the changes to these uniforms, but you're right. I mean, it looks kind of cool that they were able to get these printed and look at. So the names aren't on the back, so I mean, I
Yeah.
guess in theory anybody could wear, you know, the jerseys going forward. Which,
Yeah.
hey, that's not necessarily a bad thing either. I mean, it's kind of cool to see what I felt was a new look, so to speak. Even though it's what we're used to, we're kind of expecting the offense to wear white, the defense to wear blue, but we didn't expect red numbers on the white jerseys, which I thought
No.
was a different look, and then see red jerseys with blue letters and numbers, or sorry, blue numbers, I should say, because as I just said, there's no letters. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was just okay. Well, this is a look, and part of me wants to say too that, well, winning the Grey Cup kind of affords you the opportunity to do something new, do something different. But I got a feeling, based on the one or two other training camp photos I've seen, I kind of feel like this is maybe now like a league wide thing, like to have this style of practice
Oh, is it?
jerseys.
Oh, okay.
I'll,
Okay.
I'll have to double check the like the photos that I saw, but kind of feels like they did the similar thing in other teams, but just obviously, like the same style, the same kind of print to
Yeah.
the jerseys, but
Yeah.
obviously with different colors. So I mean, listen, if it's a new initiative for the Alouettes, that's great. I mean, that to me, that as we talked about it on Sunday, like, listen, you win the Grey Cup, you have to expect to carry yourself as though you're a championship organization, and part of that includes a new look sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And we had to talk about it because we didn't talk about it last show, and just give a quick talk about it because it kind of relates to camp, kind of, but we are talking about with PKP spending money. Uh, the Alouettes finally unveiled their gorgeous championship rings. And we got to see, a lot of the guys, doing live streams on Instagram or wherever they were doing it from. But got to see a couple of players' rings in person this week when we were there. That and the replica ones that we see. I mean, just it didn't matter. Obviously, there's a little bit more heft in the player rings themselves as we saw.
Mm.
But
So and felt
yeah, saw and felt. But there were 3 different types of rings, I think, that were there. One was for the players, one that was for staff, and the replica rings, which really surprised me. And that obviously gets my head thinking of what's going to happen. How many of those were actually produced? But that's for another day. But these things, if anybody saw what these things look like, they were just absolutely gorgeous, Cliff. Um, going back, I think somebody had a picture on social media of the last 4, and what a difference! What a difference in rings between these 4. The one in 2002 till the ones now.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. I mean, just wow. Yeah, I mean, we saw the photos, we saw everything, and they did a very good job explaining all the symbolism behind how the rings come out and how they look. And that's all well and good, but until you actually see the ring in person, and if you're fortunate enough, like we were, to actually be able to hold the ring and truly see it up close, I mean, wow, what a piece of work. I mean, that is just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And I laughed. Like, I joked about it before, even on last week's episode, saying that you just wait and see. Like, all the social media that comes out when they see their rings are going to be like kids at Christmas time. And sure enough, that's exactly what it was. They were posing. They were taking all their Instagram pictures and their reels, and flexing and showing off the rings and everything like that. And yeah, you couldn't help but feel happy for them. Like, what a great event for them to have that. And just a reminder of, like, look, this is what all that hard work was, and this is what a team that nobody believed in, and look what the reward was. Look at what you got at the end of it. Not just can you call yourself Grey Cup champions as of last November, but this was the reminder. And to me, I think the perfect way to close that chapter of 2023 was getting that ring, getting that symbol that says, yes, you are a Grey Cup champion, and here's the prize. And what a prize it is. Holy cow.
And again, so much symbolism on these rings. It was also nice to see Austin Mack come back to town. Obviously he took some time out. Obviously, as we know, he moved on. He's currently with the Atlanta Falcons, but for him to be back in town to receive his ring at the ceremony, it was so nice seeing Mac back in town, man. Again, he was a huge part of the team winning the championship, and it was really cool to see. And obviously there was a lot of symbolism. You can go check out all of our socials to see what it was. It's just there's just really too much to go into. Yeah, and I don't want to bore anybody, but I know that you can go to our Facebook page. You can go, and you can go to actually all of our socials, I think, except for YouTube, where you can see the symbolism behind it. But I'll end this segment here talking about the rings with just one question for you, Cliff. Of all the symbolism that was explained to us, obviously there are ones that we just like, yes, I get it. And obviously there are ones, sometimes it's like, when teams do new logos, they're like, oh, this is symbolism of the mountains and the peaks that are in the valleys. What is your, if you have one? So what is your one that your symbolism that you love the most? And one of the ones that you were like, I get it, but if you have one.
Honestly, I think the one thing I took away from it was, and I guess this goes back to the disrespect that the team may have felt by everybody, by having everything in English at the Grey Cup in Hamilton. Like, all the signage was in English. It felt like there was no love for anything to do with the French language or the province of Quebec or anything like that. And you saw that reflected in the Grey Cup ring, because it doesn't say Grey Cup; it says Coupe Grey on one part. The other side has Alouettes Montreal as opposed to Montreal Alouettes.
Mm-hmm.
And on one side of the ring, as a backdrop, you see like the fleur de lis all over the place. Like you see, like it's like almost like a wallpaper of fleur de lis, which is of course the national symbol for Quebec.
Yeah.
So to me, I love that. I definitely thought that was a really nice touch and a reminder that, listen, this team was essentially disrespected. Nobody expected the Montreal Alouettes to be in this Grey Cup, and look what happened. And just a great reminder of that. And the fact that everybody got on board and believes in this, and they understand the importance of representing the province of Quebec, the city of Montreal, within this organization. And I think this ring symbolizes that in so many ways. And to me, that I think that's the part that I look at it and I'm like, wow, that's just perfect. That's exactly what's needed. And it really helps this ring stand out from not just other Grey Cup championship rings from other teams, but even the other rings from the Alouettes. Because you don't see quite that in the other rings, like maybe because it wasn't such a focal point, but it really felt like they wanted to hammer home the point that, hey, we were disrespected. And this ring, as far as I'm concerned, helps bring that to light and will serve as a constant reminder that, yes, this is a Canadian Football League, but this is also the Ligue Canadienne de Football as well. I mean, it's a bilingual league. And as far as the Alouettes are concerned, their voice matters too. Like the voice and the feeling of the province of Quebec does matter in this league as well. And to me, I think there's no better symbolism of that than those points that I saw there. Is there anything that I don't like or I'm not too crazy about, or I'm like, honestly, not really. I mean, I think they nailed all the important points. I think they showed everything the way it's supposed to be. And when certain things got explained, you're like, yes, that makes total sense. I like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I felt was kind of like, I was a little surprised not to see the Grey Cup logo or the Grey Cup itself in the main face of the ring. It really was just the M-Bird logo, but you see it you see the Grey Cup on the side on one of the other sides of the ring as sort of in front of the backdrop of the city of Montreal, which also really nice too. So I mean, for sure it's a Grey Cup ring. There's no question about that. But I mean, I look at this ring and I'm like, wow, this is just stunning. And no matter how many pictures you see of it, folks, and how awesome it looks and all that jazz online, really, truly, it doesn't do it justice. You have to see this thing. And if you're lucky enough to hold it in your hands and see it or try it on or anything like that, wow. I mean, like, it's breathtaking. There's simply no other way to describe it than breathtaking.
Yeah. By the way, did you also notice that there was no CFO logo on it either?
You know what? I didn't really think of it like that, but you're right.
I'd have to check the other Owls rings or any past rings if any of the teams have had CFO logo. But for me, I think one of the coolest symbolisms. I mean, I did not know this. Again, my kind of eye roll one is probably the amount of diamonds that were on the face of it. Representing the X amount of days that Mr. Pelleto has owned the team. I thought it was unique, but it's still eye roll ish, I guess. But I also liked the 8-game winning streak, how they symbolize the 8-game winning streak on the side of the what do they call it? Is it called the hilt? What do they call this thing? I'm trying to remember what they call that side of the ring. Shank. They call it a shank. How they were able to symbolize the 8-game winning streak with the 5 regular season wins in blue, the 2 postseason wins in red, and then the Grey Cup in diamond.
Yeah.
I thought that was really nice. And for me, obviously, I think it was still one of the most it was something that really wasn't talked about because it was more of an internal thing. I loved seeing the team's 2024 unofficial logo inside the ring itself. The plane with all the symbolism.
That was the 2023 logo.
Sorry, 2023. Yeah, 2023. Apologies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and perhaps in addition to that, like you talked about the inside of the ring too, like sometimes you'll see things engraved as well down at the bottom of that.
Oh yeah.
Me, I thought was the icing on the cake, which is ironic because icing is usually on top. But anyways, down at the bottom of this ring, underneath, was 2 things that truly symbolize what this Grey Cup championship was about. The 1%, as you know, Tim, we the ones. This team talks about the 1% all the time. How nobody believed in them except for the 1% of the league, and also to our quarterback Cody Fajardo and his impassionate speech the day before, and those 4 words that will probably ring throughout Alouettes legend for a long, long time. F you, just watch.
Yeah.
But you look in the ring and you see a 1, a percentage sign, and then FYJW. And to me, I thought, chef's kiss. That
Yeah.
is just the. It doesn't get much better than that, as far as I'm concerned. Now if they put that on anywhere else on the ring, I think that would have been a little tacky. But to put it underneath, it had to be included. There's no question about that. But to kind of keep it there where it's, or only the true, like those who know where it is, kind of thing. And
Like their unofficial logo from 23. I agree with you. I agree with you.
yeah,
That's usually the spot where it's more symbolism for if you were a player on the team itself, or if you're a
mhm,
part of the organization, you knew exactly what
exactly.
that meant.
Yeah.
But again, check out on our socials. The stuff is absolutely gorgeous. Again, we want to thank anybody, the people who allowed us to hold their rings and just to gawk at them, because that's all that we were really doing is gawking at them because they were just so gorgeous. And I thought was funny too, as we were talking about, and maybe it was kind of a Freudian slip that I said 2024, Cliff. If anybody saw, the day prior to camp starting, officially starting, there was the social media post that was done by the Alouettes, where the coach Moss asked everybody to stand up, say their name, and again, the same mantra that he was preaching last year, talking about Quebec, talking about the 514, etc., saying to stand up, say your name, and say what your number is in English and in French.
Hmm.
And not only that, and I think he teased it a little bit too, and we talked about him a couple of episodes back, which you can check out on our archive over at what's flightdeck.ca, is we saw the new, slightly updated team, unofficial team logo for 2024.
Hmm.
So we caught a glimpse of it behind him. So
Yeah.
they had moved on, and I think we've heard that quite a bit, not only on Sunday, but we've heard it quite a bit recently, where you know I think Cody said as of December, he was already after December, after Christmas, and heading once he got to January, he was looking at the next. He was looking forward again to the
Hmm.
next season,
Yeah.
and it's true. I mean, it's yes, we are still, as you said at the top, we are still the defending Grey Cup champion, but this is year 2. This is year 2 of this team, so
Yeah,
can't
it's one thing. It's one thing to win a championship, but it's a completely different thing altogether to defend a championship. And now the Alouettes are going to learn how to do that. Like now, nobody's taking them lightly. Now you can't sneak under the radar. Like the hunters have become the hunted. Like you can't coast by and hope that nobody will notice what you're doing. Like everybody knows what you're doing now. And if anything, I think a lot of teams are going to want to try and copy that sort of success that the Alouettes had last year. It wasn't a fluke by any stretch of the imagination. Just simply put, everybody had slept on the Alouettes in Montreal in 2023. They're not sleeping on them anymore. They're expecting this team to come out and dominate and make a lot of noise. So, I, but I think if anybody's going to be prepared for that task, it's going to be this team. It's going to be this coaching staff. It's going to be the players that were there last year that are back in 2024. And they're going to be the ones that's going to take the new people and say, listen, we busted our ass. We did what we had to do. We did everything possible in order to get the championship, and we won another one. And that's how it starts. And that's how you build a winning culture. That's how you maintain a winning culture and a championship culture. And it all started this past Sunday at training camp. Like you saw right off the bat. One of the things that I came away very impressed with is the coaching staff. They were suffering no fools. Like they were making it very clear. Like we are champions. We will act as champions. If you're not ready to do that, get the hell out. And
eh,
I think that's the mindset you got to have. You got to act like a champion. You got to be, if you're going to be a champion, you got to act like a champion. Simply put, you got to work like one. You got to do the not fun stuff. You got to do whatever it takes in order to have that championship swagger and to back it up. That's what you got to do. And you saw it immediately that first day of practice.
yeah, for sure, and it's something that we were obviously leading into, I guess, pre-game day 1. And then post day 1 is, I don't think I've ever seen this before, Cliff, is seeing a player released the day before camp and then a player released the day after day 1 camp. I don't, at least personally, I don't think I've ever seen that happen before. And obviously, Bryce Notree got released basically after getting his ring. He didn't make it to the field for day one, and then post day one, the Alouettes cut Jeremy Banks. So you talk about acting like a champion. The question was, at least we can say, at least for Jeremy, because we don't know what the issue is with Bryce, but what caused him to be released? I mean, I do understand that we've already had our first cuts, which we're going to talk about, obviously, a little bit later on in the show.
Mhm.
But, after seeing, and we mentioned this over on our season premiere of Flightdeck Live, by the way, check it out. It is over on our YouTube page.
Mhm.
Just seeing how the coaching, as you're talking about the coaching staff, we mentioned this in Flightdeck Live. The coaches, man, just seeing the coaches. I mean, just the one scrimmage that we saw, the one part of the scrimmage that we saw, just had us so hyped, and we were like, we didn't have pads on, but we felt like we should just do what the coach wanted us to do, right?
Pretty much. Listen, I talk about him a fair bit. You can't help but love Coach Greg Quick. He's the linebacker coach for the Alouettes, and oh my gosh, this guy is just a ball of energy, and he's an older gentleman too. And I laughed. Remember during the Eastern semifinal last year, during that melee that happened with Chris Edwards, Coach Quick was in there, and he was ready to throw hands. Like he had that what I like to call old man energy. Like not like he was ready to go. He was going to kill somebody. You could just see like he was ready to go to war, and that mentality has not changed with winning a championship. You can tell right off the hop because he was running a drill and the players were not executing it very well. And at least if they were to continue to do this, somebody was going to get hurt. Somebody was going to screw something up and it was not going to go well. And he basically tore a strip off of the whole lot of them, really. It's not like he was singling one person out. He just said, all of you. And he just, listen, he read them the riot act. Let's put it that way. He read them the riot act and made it very clear. If you're not here to perform, get lost, because we will not, like, we are a championship team and we will not accept anything less than the best from you. And a lot of players were like, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Like, just, if they weren't paying attention, I'm pretty sure they were, but if they weren't paying attention, they snapped to it right away. And you and I were like, oh, yeah. I was like, yes, sir, no problem. Like, just, listen, I don't want to piss Coach off. Like Coach Quick was, he, as I said, he suffers no fools. He like I said, he's there to help you, and he will get the most out of you. And that's what I love about him, is that he is a fantastic coach and will definitely get the most out of you as a player. But you gotta want it. You gotta work for it too. Like, he's not just gonna hand anything over to you. You gotta bust your ass and make it happen. You cannot take plays off. And seeing that day one, like most people would think day one, okay, this is your first chance to getting back out there and it's getting the feel for the field and everything like that. And that's all well and good. Maybe you do that in like the first part, but I mean, he was all business day one. And I love that. I think Alouettes fans, you have to appreciate this coaching staff and seeing the other coaches too. They weren't like screaming their heads off at people, but they made it very clear with the drills, what had to be done, what was expected, and how you are expected to perform. And you did good. You got the encouragement. If you didn't do great, you were told right away. Like, it was almost like, we cannot afford to screw up. Not even day one. Like, most people would say day one is kind of like a gimme, but not this organization. Like, they were just as serious about day one. And I imagine every day after that is going to be just as serious, especially as cuts are looming, as you start building this final roster in a couple of weeks. I mean, like there are no days off as far as I'm concerned. And that's truly the mindset you've got to have coming into this. If you want to be a part of this championship organization, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly. And another one of the things, it's just happened to be where we were located. I was also seeing how new running backs coach Dave Jackson was working with our running backs. It was obviously as if people, because we were asked this actually when we were there. Tyrell Sutton is not with the team anymore. It is now Coach Jackson. And it was interesting to see how he worked with these guys. it wasn't along the lines of Coach Quick, but I mean, we got our what we needed with him, man. And this was after the fact, but it was interesting to see how he was able to work with them.
Yeah, and same idea. He explained what needed. It wasn't a guessing game. He made it very clear what was expected, and if you didn't execute it right, he explained why. He showed you how to do it, and once you got it down, he was encouraging. He said, "Good, let's go. Next one, and just same intensity, same. I don't want to say aggression, but like
they all have their own style. It's even with Coach Moss. He has his own style too. So I mean, it's
but again, it's business. Like you're this isn't a party. You're not. It's not a camp in the sense you've come here to relax and hang out with your buddies or anything like that. No, you're here to work. You're here for a job. You're here. This is a job interview, and you better be ready to go. Simply put, and that's the thing. Getting these running backs. I mean, you got Jeshwin Antwi, Walter Fletcher. Those are your established guys. Sean Thomas Erlington is joined the team, but he's a veteran as well. He knows he's been through a few training camps himself. But then the rookies that come in afterwards, like if they don't know what's going on right now, they've got a much better idea as a result of this because you get to learn right away. Like, okay, you want to run with these big dogs, like this is what you got to do, and this is how you got to be able to keep up. Simply put, and yeah, I was definitely a big fan of how Coach Jackson ran his drills, and to me, like came away very impressed. Like this running game without William Stanback is going to be an interesting challenge, I think, in 2024 for the Alouettes. But based on what we saw already, just with Walter Fletcher, Jeshwin Antwi, Sean Thomas Erlington, okay, we know what these guys can do, but is there anybody that can join them? Is there anyone that can kind of step up and be there, even if they end up just on the practice roster, just in case any of those three guys go down? You want to see who's going to be able to hang with these guys because we know what they can do. It's the other guys that we have no idea what they can do. So it's going to be a very interesting battle over the next couple of days, but one that I'm definitely interested in finding out more about.
Now, when you go, obviously going to camp, you're on the lookout to see what the new guys are able to do, what your current, veterans are able to do. And if anybody who's not really been to camp or, just there for the experience itself or has never really been to a practice or anything, it's really what you can learn just by watching the practice itself. And I tell you, Cliff, we learned quite some interesting things when looking at who's with the ones, who's with the twos, and who's with the threes this week, especially on offense. And this is on day one. This is something that we had noticed. And one of the first things that you and I both noticed, and I remember looking at each other, and just each just giving us a glance, was we saw that David Alexander was moved to the twos. He was backing up Cody Fajardo. Caleb Evans was number 3.
Yep.
That right there is something that I don't know if Joe Fan would notice coming out of the gate, noticing when it came to somebody watching practice. But it was again, that was a very interesting to see that Davis Alexander's it was practicing currently, at least as of Sunday. We would imagine, as we were taping this, he still is a 2, but we'll find out. But still, it was very interesting to see him as a 2.
Yeah, and we've talked about it now for the past, it's been now 2 years that we've had Davis Alexander on this in this organization. We know we've known from day one what he's capable of, and he just gets better year after year. And like he was slinging the rock big time on Sunday, and just perfect zip on his passes. Like I don't want to play catch with this guy unless I've got like catcher's mitts. Like that's how fast and intense and how hard he was throwing the ball. But accurate too. I mean, like he was checking off all the boxes. Like he looked like someone that truly, and this is no disrespect to Caleb Evans, who did win 2 games for the Alouettes as a starter last year when Cody Fajardo went down to injury. But I definitely think the Alouettes now are looking at Davis Alexander as a potential, as truly the quarterback of the future, like someone that we really have to pay attention to. And again, no disrespect to Caleb Evans, who does a fantastic job, and he's the short yardage specialist for the Alouettes. But I think if Cody were to go down to injury, I truly think it's going to be Davis that's going to get the tap on the shoulder and be like, okay, kid, let's see what you can do. And you can tell he's ready to go. He's always said to us, I'm ready when they call me. And you expect someone to say that. You expect them, like, that's what you want to hear, but that's what you expect to hear as well. I truly think if, God forbid, Cody Fajardo does go down to injury, I really think it will be Davis that gets the call, and he's going to step in like no problem, like he's been doing it all his life. And if that's not a relief, I don't know what is, because you look at the quarterbacking situation throughout the East this year, and there's a lot of question marks, but not with the Alouettes. I mean, we know what Cody Fajardo can do. We saw what Cody Fajardo was able to bring to this organization, and arguably, you can say, he's the man going forward, and will be for years to come, even. But should something happen to him, should there, for whatever reason, he go down to injury or is unable to play, Davis Alexander will step in and he will perform and he will lead this team to victory.
What
I'm standing on business for that. That's truly my belief, and just based on his attitude, the way he's presented himself over the past couple of years, and just already what we saw this year. Like, again, just one day, but already you can tell that, and whatever work he's put in during the offseason, you're seeing it almost immediately. And if that's not a relief, I don't know what is, because that is what you want to see out of all of your quarterbacks, really, but out of the guy that the team considers to be QB number 2. That's what you want to see, and that's just great. That's just really great to see.
It was also interesting to see another one that I was actually impressed with was our other quarterback also. That was in here in Montreal for the very first time was James Morgan out of FIU. What's funny is that I had a former Alouette text me, DM me during camp, and he was like, "So how's he doing?" And he goes, "Oh, I was pretty impressed on how he was throwing the ball." So that same former player texted me again today, and he said, "How's he seeing?" I said, "I haven't been at camp for a couple of days, but I can say that we told him what we were just talking about, how Davis was up at 2 now, and he was happy with what I mentioned, because it sounded like it's very possible that unless something occurs that Morgan will make the practice roster. We're assuming, but anything can happen in camp. But I mean, what did you think of Morgan? I thought he had a hell of a zip on his ball too. He wasn't as polished as we've seen other quarterbacks that have come in, but I was really impressed with the velocity that he had on his balls. That sounds so weird, but I think people know.
Phrasing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Velocity on his thrown footballs. There we go.
There you go. That works. Yeah, I have to say, I felt like he didn't get a chance to really open the field up and really lob some bombs, but for the few that he did throw, definitely looked really nice. I felt like there was a lot of he was going to the check down quite a bit. So I mean, it's kind of hard to get excited about a 5-yard pass, or like just a quick handoff or something like that, just to get rid of the ball. Like, it almost felt like they don't want, like, okay, you're not trying to win the quarterback job today, pal. Like, just follow the basic fundamentals. And maybe that's really what it was for him, just because we know as we said, we know what to expect from the other 3 quarterbacks, but this guy doesn't need to, blow his load. I hate to use it in that expression.
Dear Lord, I go from throwing balls to blowing. Anyways,
fine. He doesn't have to expend all of his energy.
There you go.
On day 1. Christ, I don't know how we're gonna. This may be the first X-rated Alouettes Flightdeck episode.
Good Lord.
But all this to say, I think James Morgan definitely has shown some signs that, okay, this is someone who's we're going to be interested to see what happens, starting with the scrimmage game on Saturday and going into the first preseason game, because he's going to get his looks, because I don't think Cody is going to be. It's funny, this is the first year where the Alouettes are going to be playing their home preseason game first. So right. I kind of expect Fajardo to maybe get 1 or 2 series in just for the hometown fans, but then it's going to go back to Davis Alexander, Caleb Evans, and James Morgan. And I think there you'll get to see what Morgan's able to do. I got a feeling that they're going to give him a little bit, based on what we saw, they're going to give him a little bit more leeway and maybe give him a chance to open things up a little bit more. So, yeah. So far though, what we saw, I thought was decent. There's definitely something there. So I said, I'm curious to see how his progression is. I'm curious to see how he will evolve, because I remember thinking the same thing with Davis Alexander. It's like, okay, he was in a training camp with guys like Vernon Adams, Trevor Harris, Cody Fajardo, Caleb Evans. Like those are his first two training camps, and it's easy to get lost in the shuffle with those guys, with those bona fide CFL veterans. And now James Morgan is in that position, so to speak. And you know, what can we expect out of this guy? Only time's going to tell. But he showed just enough that first day for us to say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's see what he can do. Let's see what he can do in an actual game situation. Because let's face it, day one, everybody looks good, right? Everybody's out there. They're feeling good. They're feeling strong. You know, I always laugh when
We have
people
it,
ask.
but we have expectations though. It's like we've had with a couple of years. A VA coming back after an injury. We expected what he would be. It's the same thing. We commented on Davis Alexander last year.
Mhm.
It still looked like Davis, but he was a little bit more svelte, but still he had a zip on his ball, and I get it. I get it. And by the way, we can't really go on without at least mentioning a possible player who may be within the CFL, very possible here in Montreal or elsewhere, because of the CFL's intern program, right? We actually did have another quarterback who's not currently listed on the roster that was at camp.
Yeah, there's a bunch of U Sport quarterbacks that will be attending CFL camps league wide, and attending the Alouettes camp this year will be none other than Montreal Carabin quarterback Jonathan Senecal. Again, he's someone I don't think it will be draft eligible. I don't think he's draft eligible until next year at least, but this will be definitely a great learning experience for him as well. I mean, playing football in Quebec. I mean, training camps here in Quebec, obviously, so it won't seem so out of place for him. But to be able to learn from these quarterbacks that we talked about and be a part of this team, and having not just Anthony Calvillo, arguably the greatest quarterback in CFL history, as a coach, to someone to mentor him, to show him the ropes, and help him be the best quarterback possible. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation if you're Senecal. I mean, to be able to take that knowledge, go back to school, and use that for what's will no doubt be your draft year, so to speak. And yeah, I definitely think this is a great program. I think all the 9 quarterbacks are going to be a part of this internship, if you will, for lack of a better term. I think they're going to benefit huge from something like this. And yeah, Senecal, I think, from what I've seen of him, the dude is an outstanding football player. And if he has a chance to better himself by surrounding himself with guys like Cody Fajardo, Caleb Evans, Davis Alexander, being coached up by Jason Moss and Anthony Calvillo, whew, man, I mean, he's got to be pinching himself as far as I'm concerned. Like, if you want to get better, you could do far worse than having those gentlemen that I just mentioned kind of showing you the ropes and showing you what it's like to be a professional quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. And we're talking about ones and twos, et cetera, what teams are. We did notice a couple of things also when it came to the wide receivers. I don't know if it was, I'll just name a couple of things to you, Cliff, and we'll just go from there. For one, obviously to me, what stood out, which made obviously a lot of sense, was having Tevin Jones, our a free agent acquisition, being in the ones. I thought it was very interesting that, and a good way, that we were also able to have. Who was that? I'm trying to say that because we have so many, dude. We have so many quarterbacks. Reggie White was a 2, considering that he's just coming back from his I guess year and a half long injury. It still was good to see him listed there. But also Shedler, this is one of my surprises. Shedler, and you hyped him up quite a bit last year too, which I completely agree with you. But Shedler was a 2, and that was really cool to see him as a 2. Anything in when it came to the wide receivers that really stood out, other than seems like Cole Speaker's having one hell of a camp, but besides that, which we're not surprised. But anything else that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Cole Speaker, because let's not forget, he made. It's funny. I thought he made arguably the greatest catch of his life in the Grey Cup on that 3rd and 5 to extend the drive, which ultimately led to the touchdown that sealed the win for the Alouettes. he's like, but wait, there's more. And yeah, made some absolutely outstanding catches. And he's made a lot of noise over the first couple of days of training camp, which you love to see because right away, a lot of people were saying as soon as Austin Mack set his sights for the NFL, a lot of people were like, who's replacing Austin Mack? Well, like we talked about 2 years ago, you can't replace a Geno Lewis. And as such, this year, you can't just replace an Austin Mack. But whoever steps into that spot, so to speak, better be ready to go. I mean, you've got Tyler Snead, you've got Tyson Philpott, Keon Julian Grant, who also coming back from an injury and looking like nothing's happened. I mean, that's which is such a relief. But yeah, Tevin Jones, that's someone who I saw flashes of brilliance with the Rough Riders last season. He too, I think, made a case for taking that spot, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh. I mean, that's the fun part about this is who's going to step up and end up being with the ones, with the established guys like the Philpott, the Julian Grant, and Tyler Snead. Even, I mean, that's some pretty good company right there. But yeah, I think Reggie White Jr. seeing him come back and look outstanding is such a relief, and for him, this is definitely a season of redemption because yeah, we talked about this, you and I. He's a Grey Cup champion now. But he didn't contribute, and I'm sure even in his mind, even though he probably considers himself a Grey Cup champion, as he should, but in all reality, he's just a member of a championship organization. Like for most people, being a Grey Cup champion means you were on the field, you helped contribute to the win. Whereas, unfortunately, due to injury, he wasn't able to do so. So if that's not motivation enough, I don't know what is, quite frankly. I mean, I think Reggie White wants to prove that, because he caught fire in 2021 and was absolutely outstanding until he went down to injury. Like he was looking like he was going to be that, that top tier receiver that the Alouettes had been needing. So he's got, like, to me, that's going to be one of the major stories for camp is how will Reggie White redeem himself? How will he be able to come back and be the Reggie White Jr. that we expect? But you look at this receiving core, and I mean, there's some real weapons. I'm glad you mentioned Shedler Furvius because, yeah, he too looked phenomenal. I mean, I know it was only day one, but he really looked outstanding. And national receiver, I mean, you talk about an embarrassment of riches when it comes to guys like Tyson Philpott, Keon Julian Grant, Shedler. The Alouettes even drafted Frederick Antoine out of the University of Laval. He too is he's gonna want to get his. He's gonna want to show that he belongs on this team. Like this is the position that Shedler was in last year. Was okay. Just make the team. Just let me get on the team and let me show what I can do. And it took a while for him. Like we didn't really see very much action last year, but when he got on the field, he was definitely ready to go. And that's the attitude you got to have. And this year, I think Shedler is going to get the chance to show what he can do in the national receiver spot. And if he can ball out and be able to step in, in relief for like a Tyson Philpott or Keon Julian Grant, that's just going to bode so well for him. And this wide receiver position, you thought it was cut and dry until Austin Mack decided to go to the NFL, but
yeah,
there's still some dudes on this team that are ready to ball out, that are really ready to help make Cody Fajardo look even more like a superstar. So between the running back, like this offense, all things considered, I won't call it a high octane offense, but definitely do not sleep on this offense because there is definitely a lot to like. And I definitely think that they're going to make some noise this year without question.
Yeah. And my sentimental favorite is just because it's kind of a 6 degrees of separation type of thing. I think, I'm talking about is that rookie wide receiver, Ramo Checkil Bowman. He has ties in a way to the Alouettes because his coach in the Indoor Football League is Les Moss, whose father was Perry Moss, former Alouettes head coach from 1960 to 62. So I'm kind of have my fingers crossed for him because I think it's a great type of story if he were able to make the squad. Even starting off as on the practice squad. So I did, we'll talk right before we finished the show about who we spoke with this past week at the end of camp, and I did speak to him, and we were talking. And well, I love to have, if he does make the team, I'd love to have him on the show. But we didn't get to see much of returns at all. I think we're probably going to be able to see those more at the days of camp when we go next, and be able to see what was at for the scrimmage itself. So we'll see a little bit. So we really can't comment, I don't think, on the returns, because we really didn't see much of it. Anything else that really stood out to you from day one, whether it been from some of the drills that we saw to defense to stuff like that?
I mean, nothing was really outstanding other than, like I said, when they did do some one-on-ones. I mean, you talked about the defensive backs. A lot of those guys, there's a lot of defensive backs in this training camp. And man, how good is it to see guys like Reggie Stubblefield and KB and Ento act like the Grey Cup was yesterday. Like that, like, didn't take it. Like, there was nothing missing from those guys. I mean, that's just outstanding. I'm so happy to see guys that just know how to ball out and realize what the opportunity they had. Like, don't forget, like, these two guys, for example, Ento and Stubblefield. They were rookies last year. Sometimes they looked a little out of place. Hell, Stubblefield didn't even survive training camp.
Yeah.
And look where they are now. And even in speaking with them afterwards, it's just, you get the impression that they know they belong here, but they still feel like they got to prove themselves. And I love that. I love that they're not taking anything for granted. They realize the opportunity they have before them. And again, now they're in a position of, okay, they're not quite veterans, but at the same time, they've got the championship experience. And these younger guys are going to be looking to them, even though they're young guys themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be looking to them like, okay, how did you do it? How did you get yourself on here, on this team and become who you've become? It's got to be a kind of a weird position for them, but at the same time, you see the excitement with them. You see, okay, yeah, I'm a Grey Cup champion, but I still got a lot to prove. And you cannot rest on your laurels. Definitely not with this organization. Definitely not with this coaching staff. And now that everybody sees what you did, all eyes are definitely on you. And truthfully, I think they're ready for the challenge. I think if there are any two guys that are ready to face that kind of pressure and face it head on, it's definitely KB Ento and Reggie Stubblefield.
Yeah. And before we actually get to a little bit of rumblings that happened just today, yesterday, I know there was something that we did want to talk about that we hinted at on the Flightdeck Live, specifically about the some of these players that made modifications or changes to their player numbers from last year. And a lot of them were not the ones that we had learned about, weren't necessarily just done on a whim, but they actually were, there was some meaning behind it, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were very surprised that some of these guys had changed their numbers, and we're just like, whoa, why? Like, I mean, especially you just got a Grey Cup ring, which invariably has your jersey number engraved on it, for lack of a better term. And now you're switching your again. And what if someone bought your jersey last year? Like, now they're gonna go buy another one? Like, oh, like that. This is something I kind of have a hard time with, and just again, a reason why I just can't buy a player's jersey. I mean, I truly get now why people will stick with a player like an evergreen player like an Anthony Calvillo or a Ben Cahoon, and will buy their jersey, even like buy the brand new jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
Like even though those players never wore those jerseys, at least they're the only people they've worn. They're the only people that they've only ever worn Alouettes jerseys. So it's like a safe bet, like the safest of safe bets as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
I get that. But yeah, quite a few players did actually change their numbers from last year to this year, and very surprised. Most notably, Reggie Stubblefield was wearing 35 last year, is now rocking the 2. When we asked him about it, he said, well, my college number was number 1, and I really wanted that, but Darnell Sankey wasn't going to give that up, so number 2 is the closest, so that's what I'm going with. Like, okay, fair. I had a feeling it was going to be that because I knew Reggie did wear number 1 when he was with Kansas State, so I'm guessing Sankey really likes the number 1 too, so he wasn't going to part ways with it. Fun fact, Reggie did try to get the number 1 after Hergy Mayala, who had it last year, was released, but they wouldn't let him get it. And then Sankey ended up with it, and the rest, as they say, is history. So now, if you bought a Reggie Stubblefield number 35 jersey, well, sorry, you're gonna have to go get a number 2 now if you want to support Reg. Davis Alexander last year was wearing number 3, and he'd mentioned it too, and I thought it was really great that it was in tribute to Vernon Adams Jr., who did wear the number 3 for the Alouettes and was a integral part in his experience as an Alouette, and he wanted to pay tribute to VA by rocking the 3. Won the Grey Cup wearing number 3, but switched to number 10. And I thought, okay, 10, what for? And let's not forget, Davis, this is his 4th number now. Because he, well, he technically started wearing number 6, which was his college number in training camp. But in training camp, you were allowed multiple numbers. But when he did actually make the team, they gave him number 17. And then he switched to 3. And now he switched to 10. So we asked, why number 10? And it's in tribute to his father, who himself, a former professional rugby player, which neither of us knew that.
Nope.
So that's a fun fact. But also, too, his father is also suffering. He's suffering from stage 4 cancer. And so he really wanted to pay tribute to his dad by wearing his number, which I thought is absolutely admirable. I think it's fantastic. And of course, nothing but best wishes to Mr. Alexander and his battle. You see, like, Davis was really, really excited to talk about this, and you can tell that this really meant a lot to him. So I think part of him has always wanted number 6 because of his college days, but obviously Tyson Philpott is not going to give that up now that he got that, because he also had to switch his number 2 years ago, or last year, I should say. He switched to number 6. So,
yep.
I tell you, Tim, these jersey numbers, like, try to keep up with that. Like, you really do need a program.
You really do. You really do. And there were some others. It's funny. Brock Gowanlock, quote unquote, slimmed down to number 9.
He did. And as I recall, he did wear the number 9 when he was with the University of Manitoba. So that made sense. But yeah, that too was same idea, right? It's just like, okay, well, I get it. Yeah. Pierre-Olivier Lestage went from 68 to 66. Okay, I mean, yeah. I believe he wore that number when he was with in university. So I get it. I get why these guys get attached to numbers. And
yeah. It's like me. I wore one when I was a kid, and I to me, I still have a favorite number. If I ever have a choice, yeah, for sure.
Listen, sure. When I have several Alouettes jerseys with the number 50 on it, because that's my favorite number.
There you go.
I get it. There's reasons why people go with the numbers they are, and sometimes you don't have the option of choosing a number. It's just like, here, this is your number, and you're a rookie. You shut your mouth and you take the number. But if you ever get the opportunity to choose a number that you want, then if it's available, you go for it. So
yeah, think about it. Van Cahoon, technically, everybody remembers his 86. He had another number, but when he was a rookie, same thing with Gino Lewis. Gino was not always his number either. So things happen. Obviously, we need to talk about, before we finish up, we need to talk about what occurred today, and is a little, I guess there really isn't much or yesterday. There's not much to really talk about, but we'll talk about, and then we talk about the cuts. Sean Lemon as everybody know, he retired and then was suspended indefinitely because of he was accused of betting while he was playing. Betting on the Calgary Stampeders when he was playing for Calgary in 2021. Mm-hmm. He has since appealed, which is his right, through the CFLPA, and he was practicing yesterday. I think one of the questions I wanted, I'm glad he's back. I do understand the reasoning. I don't, he has the right to come back and play. I'm happy to have him on the roster again. Mm-hmm. I'll ask you what your thought is by asking you this, because I heard this question was asked quite a bit in yesterday's post-practice scrum. Do you think him being around is going to cause any issues? Is it going to cause drama that doesn't need to be around?
I don't think so. I mean, let's face it. Sean's been in town pretty much all off season. He's still been around this team, like even before he abruptly retired. Like he was ready to go. He had signed a 1-year extension to stay in Montreal with the idea of playing in 2024. He was doing charity events. He was going, any sort of public appearances that the Alouettes were doing. He was a part of it. So he pretty much stayed in town throughout the entire off season, and he was also at the ring ceremony to get his ring, which wasn't a surprise to see him still in the Montreal area. But once all this news came down about him being suspended indefinitely by the Canadian Football League for betting.
For betting.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. Well, a lot of people didn't want to believe it, simply the fact that, okay, well, he's going to come back and play. This almost feels like a nothing burger. But, I mean, the CFL made it very clear how they felt about gambling, and, especially gambling on the CFL itself, gambling on games you're participating in. It's not a good look. It's still not a good look. And I understand, like, other leagues have different ways of punishing. As we talked about, Pete Rose suspended for life, can never be in the Hall of Fame as a result of that. Was it John Tay Porter, I think, for the Toronto Raptors? He too's got a lifetime ban because he was betting on games at betting on the Raptors to lose, and they did. So, that kind of calls into question your intentions. Whereas Sean Lemon was, yes, betting on himself and betting on the Stampeders, but to win. So
yeah, and the timeline, by the way, is this. I think this came out. This information came out. He abruptly retired on April 10th. Then the announcement came out, and then he was suspended on the 24th of April. So I've been asking the question: did he actually sign his retirement papers? Because you have to do that in order to not be on. Because he was listed on the Owls roster the entire time as being suspended.
Right.
To the question that I asked, do I think it's going to be a distraction? No, I don't. If you go and you watch yesterday's press game, post practice scrum, it's answered particularly by Danny Mack, and Jason Malice didn't mention anything, and nor did Sean. It was just like no comment. He can't comment. But you obviously, I think you and I are both in the same boat. We have no problem with him playing out his playing while he is appealing.
Yeah, and I know some people are trying to make the comparison to what's happened to Chad Kelly in Toronto.
People do not dare. Don't you dare.
You're trying to compare apples and fire trucks, people. That is two completely different things altogether.
Yes.
You're not even in the same sport at this point. I mean, you are in the sense it's football, but I mean, like, these are two absolutely different things. I mean,
that's right. You have apples and you have pinballs.
Ooh, okay.
I see
what you did there. Very nice, very nice.
I had to do that. So,
but
I'm glad you and I are thinking the same thing. I'm glad you're thinking. Now,
yeah.
Obviously, we have one more thing we're going to talk about was cuts.
Before we do have a couple of new players joining the team.
Yes, and yes, that is true. That is true. We have a bunch of people who have joined the team. Go ahead and mention it, Cliff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that would be we actually had two of our draft picks finally showed up to camp because they were at NFL mini camps and were not offered contracts, so they were all of a sudden free to come to CFL camp and do their thing. So on Tuesday, the Alouettes were thrilled to be able to welcome both Jeffrey Conte Arcu and Michael Herzog to the Alouettes lineup. Conte Arcu was with the Miami Dolphins for their rookie minicamp, was not offered anything, so now he gets to come up here and show why he was a first-round draft pick. Michael Herzog was with at the rookie minicamp for the Detroit Lions. Same thing, wasn't offered a contract. You're free to go, free to come up to the CFL, and now he's in camp as well, which, as we already talked about earlier, uh, he's going to be in tough simply because the running back competition is definitely going to be a tough one. And we've seen what this guy can do on film, and I'm excited personally to see what he's able to do on the field. Same thing with Kante Arku. I think when it comes to the linebacking position, I mean, there's a lot of talent already on this team, but I'm curious to see if he can get in there and see what he can do, and if he'd be able to contribute right away. So to me, I think that's going to be very interesting to see as well. As far as other additions, I mean, the Alouettes have also added Charleston Rambo, to the active roster. Former NFLer, definitely a playmaker if given the opportunity. One can't help but wonder if a lot of these guys have to be inspired by the Austin Mack story. Like he came in, like he had a cup of coffee in the NFL, wasn't able to catch on there. Came up to the CFL with the right attitude, came into work, didn't see it as a step down or lesser than, but he showed up, worked his ass off, and look what happened. Wins a Grey Cup championship. I'm sure a lot of these receivers are looking at him saying, I can do that. I can do that. Well, this is the opportunity to do it. This is your time to come up and show what you got. So
yeah,
we'll see if Charleston Rambo could end up being the next Austin Mack. Could he? Only time's going to tell, but you got to be here to do it. So
exactly. Oh, by the way, remind everybody we are on social media. You can find us multiple places. Obviously, you can find us over on X. That is at Alouettes FL Deck. You can find us over on Facebook. Or that's Alouettes Flightdeck Pod, and also on Instagram and YouTube. That's at Alouettes Flightdeck. We can catch all of our past episodes, especially of the new season of Flightdeck Live. We will be, hopefully, we did one from day one at camp. We will be doing some from hopefully the next couple of times when we go. We'll be there most likely Friday, Saturday, Monday, but stay tuned to our socials because we'll let you know if we're going to be there. Come by and say bonjour, hi, right, Cliff? We may have a giveaway, by the way, for the scrimmage. A giveaway? What dare you say? Giveaway to the preseason opener? Flight crew seats? Sure, why not? Stay tuned to all of our socials, and we'll make sure we let you know. Before we go, guys, at least we got to mention, Cliff, there were some cut downs today. First day of cut downs. Go ahead and give everybody a quick synopsis of the guys who are no longer in camp.
All right. Well, again, by this time, you have to be down to 75 players. And as we talked about with Sean Lemon, Jeffrey Cartin-Arcu, Michael Herzog, and Preston Williams joining the ranks, that means few people have to go. So today the Alouettes released 10 players. I'll go through the list quickly. Trey Botts, defensive lineman from University of Colorado State, Pueblo. Troy Brown, linebacker from Mississippi. Jerron Cage, defensive lineman from Ohio State. Malachi Carter, who actually I thought looked pretty decent in some limited reps on Sunday. Wide receiver from Georgia Tech. Unfortunately, as good as he looked, it clearly wasn't good enough. But as we talked about, wide receiver is a very tough battle this year. Another wide receiver, Philando Jordan from southeastern Louisiana. Unfortunately, it was given his walking papers. Charles McClendon, a running back from Cincinnati. He had some very solid reps as well, like it is in the drills that we talked about with Coach Jackson. I thought he was catching on pretty good, but maybe in the actual game, like in one-on-ones, maybe it just wasn't translating. So unfortunately, he's out the door. Deshaun McNary, who was actually on the practice squad last year, DB from Central Michigan, unfortunately, didn't make the cut. The name that really is a bit of a surprise will be a bit of a surprise because he actually did start a couple of games last year. Cordell Rogers, defensive back from Texas State. Unfortunately, he got injured early on in camp, which kind of opened the door. With a couple of other injuries, kind of opened the door for Reggie Stubblefield to come back after being cut from the last day of camp. So once again, it was going to be tough sledding for a lot of these DBs, and staying healthy is always crucial to anyone's success. Unfortunately for Cordell, he just couldn't stay healthy, but I do believe he's got a great. He was at least able to get his Grey Cup ring, kind of like Bryce Notary. So, I mean, if that's a consolation of any sort,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
or it could be injury related. Who knows? I mean, it's obviously someone like that you want on your team, but if you're not healthy, then you're just taking up a spot, unfortunately. Marcus Williams, running back from Louisiana Tech, also shown the door. And last but certainly not least, defensive lineman from Kentucky, Jordan Wright. It's kind of funny because when I hear defensive line from Kentucky, I think of Anwar Stewart. And I believe this young man was coached by one Anwar Stewart, former Montreal Alouette. So
Yep.
I don't know if Anwar's been paying attention, if he knew that Jordan was in Alouette's camp this year or not, but I would have to say yes. I have to believe he would know this, but maybe you kind of hope you can catch fire. Lightning strikes twice in the same place, kind of thing. Having a defensive lineman from the University of Kentucky on your squad, not to be this year, unfortunately for Jordan Wright, but it's unfortunate. But I mean, cuts do have to be made, and the one thing I would definitely tell these young men is just stay ready. And once again, we keep going back to this example of Reggie Stubblefield, cut on the last day of camp.
Yeah, exactly.
He could have got down. He could have let it ruin him, but no, he stayed focused. He stayed ready. He kept his cell phone charged, make sure that when the call came, and invariably it did. I mean, let's not forget, he was also contacted by Winnipeg, of all teams.
Yep.
To possibly come in, but he loved Montreal. He loved his time in Montreal. I guess he saw what was being built in Montreal, and he wanted to be a part of that. So he almost kind of forced Montreal to make a decision, like, okay, we either get this guy or someone else is going to get him, because it really came across like Winnipeg was ready to go all in on Reggie, but ultimately Montreal won out, and look what happened. So
exactly. By the way, we also mentioned two players were put on the suspended list: DB Matt Severance from Bentley, and Lyndon Stevens, the DB, also from Cincinnati. So, the Owls needed to make some modifications from what they had to. And by the way, we're talking about giveaways and stuff like that. I also have forgotten to mention, until the 31st of this month, if you go over to our shop over at flightdeckgear.ca, use the code CAMP24. You'll save 10% off your entire order of that sweet Flight Deck merch.
Oh yeah, if you haven't gotten any, folks, get on that, because I mean it's absolutely fantastic, and what better way to show the love than with some awesome Flight Deck merch? There's lots of it out there, and listen, we're even going to help you save some money. I mean, what more do you want at this point?
Exactly. Again, stay tuned to all of our socials, because we will be at camp over the next couple of days. But stay tuned for when we'll actually be there. But we will be most likely be there for sure for the scrimmage. But stay tuned for more. We'll be back.
As always, like, subscribe. However you're following this, that's how you're going to get the notification. That's how you know when we go live, when you know we'll be at camp. So once again, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Whatever it is, however it is that you associate with us, make sure you're doing that so you get all the updates as they happen.
Exactly. And we will see you guys next Wednesday to talk about the scrimmage and a lot more. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.